Hello and welcome. My name is Tom. This is the Enthusiasm Project Season 10, Episode 2, coming at you. And speaking of 2, I do have a very exciting little bit of equipment update for today. So we're going to jump into that. That's my little foreshadowing teaser. And then we're going to talk about our main topic today. So there are a couple things I want to cover before that. Main thing that I wanted to go over today is something that has been really on my mind for quite a while, but especially in the past couple of weeks. And it really, really does have to do with reevaluating my approach to YouTube. In some ways reevaluating, in some ways reconfirming, and sort of just exploring ideas. So what I really want to make sure is it's super clear before we jump into this episode is I'm using this as a chance to kind of explore some of my own thoughts. And it's not that I am not giving you a best practices or a completed list or anything like that. This is literally a chance for me to I'm working through some thoughts that I want to share with you. And I feel like it's just sort of helpful to get them out and would 100% appreciate any sort of feedback also. On top of that, if you have something that if I say something that resonates with you or doesn't, and you want to let me know about that, I feel like this is a really great chance to have sort of a two-way dialogue. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. But before that, do want to talk a little bit about gear. And then also we do have a listener message that I'm excited to get to, which will be the perfect transition into the episode. Gear-wise, so last week I was recording with the Podmic USB into the Mackie DLZ Creator. And this week I'm recording with the Podmic USB into the Rodecaster Duo. Not the Rodecaster 2, but the Rodecaster Duo, because they're different things. And this is really the first time, other than like some test stuff, I actually just got the Duo yesterday. And this is the first time I'm using it for a thing that's not just a test recording. And I haven't seen, outside of like the promo stuff from Rode, I haven't seen anyone using it. So I feel like this must be one of the first ones that's out there. Probably, maybe that means this is like one of the first actual things that's being made using one. That would be kind of cool. And that's what we're using today. So we're going to see how it goes. Everything looks to be recording well. And I wanted to stick with the Podmic USB because I do want to get more hours just using this mic. But also, I did get also a little bit of feedback in a good way from last week's episode, sort of asking about the sound. And not that things sounded bad, but just that they sounded different. And I was sort of confused about how to answer it because I changed everything. So it's like I'm using a new microphone into a new interface, a new mixer. And there's a lot of variables, so I don't know what was affecting what positively or negatively. So I wanted to stick with the Podmic and then use the Rodecaster Duo because even though it is a new device and I haven't used it before, the internals should be exactly the same as the Rodecaster Pro 2. So the way that it's processing this microphone is exactly the same way that I could process it on the Rodecaster Pro 2, and that seems to be the case based on everything that I've used so far. It's really just the form factor that's different and the number of inputs that are different. If you haven't seen anything about the Rodecaster Duo, it essentially Rode finally did make a smaller Rodecaster. So this is the antithesis of the DLZ Creator that I used last week, which is this big, more expensive all-in-one mixer that's geared towards, people with basically like experience in audio engineering or more audio professionals. The Rodecaster Duo is smaller, compact, less expensive, and while it still has all of the capabilities of the big Rodecaster Pro, it really seems like it's geared more towards kind of everybody, and that I need a lot more time to spend with it and test it out and work with it. But it seems like, and this is sort of what I would love for it to be, is that it is kind of the all-in-one podcast mixer for most people, for most of us. Even me, like I don't really need the big Rodecaster Pro, but there's no other options. Like, I like having the input. Sometimes I do use the 4 inputs a lot for mic tests and things. So maybe I do need that sometimes. Most of the time though, I really am using one mic. This has 2 inputs, so I could easily add a guest if I needed to. We still have the same computer input outputs. We have the same, we have 2 headphone outputs instead of 4, but we still have that. We have monitor outputs. We've got all that stuff. USB, Bluetooth, 2 USB channels. We have 4 physical faders, and you can assign them and mix them and match them the same way that you can on the big Rodecaster, but it's just so much smaller. It's really, really small, and the form factor, I am loving the form factor. To kind of give an update So I don't have any like conclusions about the Rodecaster Duo, I guess I should say. So far, it's lived up to everything it says it's supposed to do, which the insides are not new. It's just the outside is new. So it shouldn't really be that big of a leap. But that change in form factor and the lower price, $500 still, I know feels a little bit high. And I just, the alternative is I can't really imagine this being $400. Maybe $450 would be, kind of the sweet spot. $500, still a little bit high, but it's $200 less than the Rodecaster, $300 less than the DLZ Creator. And it's right there in line then with the, like the Tascam Mixcast and the Zoom P8 and all that stuff, which do have more inputs, but they also are sort of like generation 1 devices, whereas this is a second generation device totally in terms of processing power and capabilities and all of that really, really fun stuff. So a couple of thoughts about the DLZ Creator after using it more and using it for a full podcast last week. It's great. And I think all the positive reviews that it's gotten so far are well earned. But oh boy, there is a learning curve on that. And I really, really, really wouldn't recommend that to someone who's just starting out. I feel like even though it has an easy mode and has amazing documentation, I really feel like you kind of need some pre-existing knowledge or background for it. But that makes sense too. It's also, I was thinking about the size of it. It's this massive console, and it's not something like the Rodecaster Duo is something that can go on the side of your desk, in the corner of your desk. It has a VESA mount on the back. You put it on an arm and keep it out of the way. It's something that can kind of be over on the side. The Mackie DLZ is a kind of a front and center piece. Like it's going, your desk is going to be set up around it because it's so big and so dominant. And that's not a bad thing, but it tells you kind of who it's for. It's for somebody who's going to be using it as a main tool most of the time, not one of many tools. It's kind of off over to the side. And there's definitely also you can see that in the interface. So like there's some quirks to the interface. Even just playing back a file is pretty tricky. You can't just go into your files, hit play, and hear it. You have to sort of do some routing and go into some menus. Obviously, the menus are very in-depth. They can be very in-depth, which is, again, not a bad thing, but it's just something to keep in mind when I've seen a lot of people see positive reviews and go like, that looks awesome, I should go get one. It's like, you probably don't want one or need one, but there's definitely a group of people out there who do want it and need it and would absolutely love it. And the weird things that I had happen with it, the things that I wasn't so excited about was while using it, it was so fantastic the way it would auto mix everything and all that was great. But the file itself that it output was really quiet. Like I was I don't know why what was recorded to the SD card was at such a different level than what was mixed and what I was seeing on the meters while recording. I'm really not sure why that happened. And that was kind of weird. It's an easy thing to fix. I just increase the volume, in software afterwards, and it's no problem. But it's weird, and I would prefer not to have to do that. And the other thing, which is just a good cautionary tale, is I'm used to the Rodecaster. I record a lot to the internal micro SD on the Rodecaster Pros, all of them. And what I do is when I'm done hitting record, I just pop out the SD card, transfer it to the computer, and that's where the file comes from. Well, actually, a lot of times they do use Road Central, but sometimes they do the SD card. It's sort of, I guess it depends on which computer I'll use. Probably don't need to know all that info. The DLZ Creator stopped recording, took the SD card out. I didn't realize that there's a way longer window from the time you hit stop recording to the time that the card is ready to be ejected. And the Creator doesn't really it doesn't have like a in-process symbol or anything. The Rodecaster, as soon as it's done recording, you can take out the card and it's ready to go. The DLZ Creator stopped recording, probably waited, 5 to 8 seconds, took out the card. And when I popped it in the computer after recording a 90-minute bits of episode, it said unable to play this file. And it showed up as being like, file 004.wave.unfinished. The file name had a .unfinished, and I didn't know what that meant. And I even put it back in the DLZ Creator, and then that file just wasn't even showing up on the memory card. It was like this corrupted, invisible file. Fortunately, I was able just in Finder on the Mac to just delete the .unfinished tag on that file extension, and then it worked. I guess that finished it. Deleting unfinished finished it. But that was very scary because I thought I lost an entire episode, which would have been very frustrating. But it was also a little confusing, and I'm not sure the prior times I've used the DLZ, which haven't been for something that long. So maybe that's what it was. I was recording for a few minutes at a time, hitting stop, and then it was ready to go like immediately. But I recorded 90 minutes of raw audio, and then maybe it needed more time to finalize it to the SD card. I don't know, and there was nothing on the screen that was indicating like do not remove card, still working or anything. So that's just something to be aware of that did potentially cause a problem. But otherwise, I mean, that thing is super cool. Still figuring out how I want to approach it. If there's going to be a video about it, I think it's worth making a video about for sure. But I don't know how I'm going to approach that yet. And then we're using the Rodecaster Duo, which is again that other end of the spectrum. It's $300 cheaper. It's 3 times smaller. I don't know. It's a way smaller device and way different, but I feel like that makes it a lot friendlier. Some cool stuff too with it. I noticed it does feel the build quality seems really good. Like I haven't had any issues with my Rodecaster Pro 2. I like the build quality. I've had no problems with it, but I know over the past year I've heard from people who have had issues with theirs and build quality with theirs, and it feels like this maybe just like leveled up a little bit. I don't know if maybe that's just because it's smaller and more compact. It feels a little more like well put together because it's like a denser little thing. But Rode does, maybe they're doing this with the Rodecaster Pro 2 now, I don't know. But what they included is a quality assurance card that comes with the Rodecaster Duo that has like 12 different things that are checked by hand and, signed off and initialed by hand from somebody at the factory. And it includes like firmware, connectors, touchscreen, buttons and controls, smart pad functionality, knobs, faders, top body, case body. Like it seems like they are putting more effort into, once this is done and it's finished being manufactured, having two different people signed off on this card, having 2 people check the functions and the mechanics of it before it goes out to a customer, which is awesome. And that I'm sure that if they weren't doing that officially before, I bet you had they done this before when there were some Rodecaster Pro 2s going out that had issues, probably would have been caught. And I don't know what that number is, because I get messages from people all the time saying they love it or they're having issues. So I don't know how many Rodecasters they've sold. I don't know, if they've sold, 100,000 Rodecasters and 200 of them have had problems. That's pretty good, honestly, like in terms of a percentage. But if 1 in every 20 of them has problems, that's really bad. And I don't know what it is. It seems like I haven't heard about issues from people purchasing recently. So it seems like mine was fine, which is an early one. Current ones seem to be fine, but maybe there was like a batch or something in the middle, maybe, that had some sort of issues in it, which would and should be covered by warranty. So it should just be more of a hassle than anything. It's not like you should be totally out of luck, but it would be nice not to have those problems in the first place. Seems like they've gotten that on track, and it seems like they've taken those lessons learned and now incorporated them into the Rodecaster Duo, which is great. So I'm really excited to spend more time with this and learn more about it. I have positive feelings about it so far, but I need to discover any quirks or problems, and that is going to tie into some of the stuff that we're talking about today. Podmic USB that I'm using right now, I do have some processing running, which I think I should be able to turn on and off. So I went to here it is with all of the processing, and if I turn that off, this is now just the Podmic USB going into the Rodecaster Duo with a dry signal. You can hear it change the EQ a bit and then turn off the noise gate. So I feel like, at least in my headphones, I can hear a lot more noise and buzzing. Turn on the processing, and I basically just went with the Podmic preset. And then because this does sound a little more rich and full than the original Podmic, but it still, to my ears, leans towards being a bit harsh. So I went into the big bottom and added in some more low end to balance that out. Which actually, I guess I can just turn. Yeah, so I'm using the big bottom now, and then if I turn that off, this is kind of what it sounds like without that. I think this still sounds nice, but it feels a little thin, a little more thin. So now I can add that back in, and it sort of fills things out a little bit. And then I did go into these are things that are not just part of the regular Podmic preset. I did go into the equalizer setting, and I did turn down the high gain a little bit. So again, this is what it would sound like without any of that EQ. It's not totally different, but it almost sounds like there's a little more sibilance, or that high end, especially with my voice. Feel like listening to this for an hour or more could get a little grating. So I added this bit of EQ to sort of tame that a little bit. And I'm still working with it. It's not like, oh, this is the perfect way to use it. But I feel like this sounds significantly better. I don't know that this is a sound you couldn't get with the original Podmic. So I think in terms of sound quality, even though they are different, kind of in practical use, they're sort of the same, which essentially just means it's a mic that you probably need to EQ. Not a huge problem, but I didn't really know that when I got the original Podmic, and I didn't EQ it or plan to EQ it or anything. But obviously this has the USB functionality, which is pretty phenomenal. I could get this same sound. I could do all the same stuff that I'm doing just through the applications on the computer and not even have to run this through a Rodecaster or anything. But to compare to last week's episode, I wanted to use the same microphone with a different interface. Likely be using a different mic next week just for the sake of fun and variety, but that's what I'm using this week. And then I am using Rode's new XLR cables. They sent me a couple of them, and then I just went out and bought a bunch because they come in a bunch of different colors. And I feel like Rode is not, like, they didn't even mention, as far as I saw, that they make XLR cables. It's sort of like they're just sort of for sale now. They are so good. They're just, XLR cables, but they're really well made. I love the lengths that they come in. The colors are perfect, and they seem to be high quality in terms of not being super prone to interference or like problems like that, which I have had with a lot of the cheaper cables that I've been buying on like Amazon and stuff over the years, which is why I've always been hesitant. People ask, like, where'd you get that blue cable? And I'm like, I got it from Amazon. It's fine, but I've also had like a bunch of them fail, so I don't know if you really want to get it. And this kind of solves that problem without going into the world of like super premium handmade custom cables and stuff, which, those are kind of next level. But this is a very nice, very practical middle ground that it's like, I really feel like of all the things they should be hyping up, maybe these XLR cables are it, because they are fantastic. All right. So that's the equipment that I'm using today. And before we jump into the topic, I do have a listener message that I wanted to share, which is actually an awesome transition into today's topic, which talks about transitions a lot. And I don't have a name from the person who dropped this off, but the message is titled Aging in Grace, which I believe is the name of a podcast. But I'm just going to call the person Grace because that feels like a good name for a good message. So take it away, Grace.
Okay, I don't know if this is recording. Tom, I'm 75 years old, and I have a YouTube channel, and I've only had it for a couple of years. And it's just teaching women, it's a Bible study basically. And then I upload clips from some of the pastors that I know. And so what struck me about I've been spending 4 hours today, 4 hours just listening to your podcasts. I saw a video that was recommended to me. I think it was either coming right after Think Media or vidIQ, something like that, because I want to start a podcast and get out of the YouTube. I just want to leave YouTube. I will continue to upload the pastors on it, but I so much like podcasting a lot better. So, but what I want to let you know is I like your style. It's very conversational, and I learn so much. I learned more from you today than I have in the past year listening to all those how to grow your channel. And I just wanted to thank you. Okay.
Alrighty. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much for that message. That totally made my day to hear that, by the way. That's like some of the nicest, kindest compliments a person in my situation could hear. So it means a lot to hear that. But also that's sort of the perfect jumping off point into today's topic about reevaluating I'll call it the YouTube approach, but it's really my YouTube approach because I definitely don't speak for everyone. And whatever it is, whatever it was that led, again, since there wasn't a name on the message, we'll just call her Grace, but whatever led Grace to feeling as though the stuff I was making was helpful and beneficial, to even go to the point then of seeking out a way to listen to stuff beyond YouTube and then leave a message to say that it was helpful, and to confirm that it was helpful, which is something I'm always scared and insecure about. I, as a person who makes stuff, wants to really know what led to that. Because that's the result that I want, is somebody to be able to take things away to enjoy and find actual value in the stuff that I make. And obviously I try to do that with everything, but sometimes I feel like I'm closer to hitting the mark than others. And especially lately, when I say lately, maybe the last year almost, I've felt like it's been harder and harder to kind of follow my own internal compass towards that for many, many reasons. And I would love to kind of hone in on what that is. And I kind of feel like I maybe already know what that is, but if anything else, then gain the confidence to kind of keep pushing towards what I think is the best version of what I can make and is the most helpful and useful, and hopefully also at least a little bit entertaining as well. So that kind of leads into this thing that Heather and I started talking about a year ago, which is we were saying that it seems like there's a big transition happening in the world of YouTube, at least in our niches. Heather and I, we kind of focus and live within different niches on YouTube, but the camera, photo, video world, and then she does a lot of sort of like business and community design, a little bit more of like the marketing world. I don't know what else to call it, but kind of we've sort of noticed something, and it feels like there's a transition happening. And we started talking about it last year just in conversations. We even mentioned it a little bit in some of our couples table live streams. And it feels almost like there's a sense of discontent in the content that content creators are creating. And I guess that might be the best way to put it, is discontent. But it could be almost like a jadedness or a fatigue. It felt like there's something's different. And I've, in that time, also talked to several different friends who have just, kind of in casual conversation mentioned that they're watching less YouTube than they used to, but it's not a conscious decision. They didn't try to I need to limit myself from this, so I'm deleting the app from my phone and, whatever. They just found themselves not watching as much, not enjoying it as much, feels like there's not as many good videos, which, there's more stuff being uploaded every day than ever before. So there's obviously plenty of content to watch on the platform. But even I've found myself watching less YouTube than I used to. And when I am watching it, I'm watching far less of the stuff I'm subscribed to and far more of things that are either recommended on the homepage or through search results. There's something about what I have normally liked and enjoyed and sought out that is not satisfying me anymore. And I feel like it has to do with this. I'm calling it a transition because it feels like there's a shift. There's something happening. The crazy part, though, is when Heather and I started talking about this with each other last year, I kind of assumed that by this point, almost a year later, something would have popped and changed and shifted, but it doesn't feel like it has. It feels like things are still sort of in this state of transition. And I don't know what it is. I can't it's not oh, this is changing from A to B. A big thing, though, that I think maybe I have felt is that it seems like I'm seeing a lot of stuff that is created not from a place of passion. And there's a huge difference between creating or watching something that is created from a place of passion, or that you're seeking out and watching from a place of passion and enthusiasm, versus something else, whatever the alternative is, something that's not that. And it got me to thinking about how things used to be back in the good old days. But it's got me thinking about, okay, if I and others are finding ourselves watching less YouTube, not because we want to, but just because something isn't satisfying us the way that it used to, what was it that really drew me in, prior to having a channel, prior to any of that, when I started actually like subscribing to and following channels, what is it that drew me into those? And so I'm thinking about, this is back in like sometimes between 2010 and 2012, like that era of YouTube, especially in the camera photo niche, was very different. I don't know how anyone, if anyone was like a full-time YouTuber or making a full-time living. I feel like everybody was kind of operating at a loss. It was sort of a hobby thing or a side thing that was being done to share knowledge or out of genuine enthusiasm or passion or excitement for a topic. And I feel like that was one of the things that really caught my attention was, even if it's just someone sitting at a desk talking about something, the fact that I knew this is what they're choosing first and foremost to do with their time at that moment kind of meant a lot and contributed a lot to the enjoyment of that channel, that video, whatever it might be. And some of those channels are still around. Things like Film Riot or DSLR Video Shooter, Ray Ortega, those are all channels from back then that really kind of kicked off my excitement. And those ones are still around. And when I look at those channels like DSLR Video Shooter, Film Riot and stuff, they have always kind of marched to the beat of their own drum. They do things pretty differently. And I feel like there's a lot of sameness in at least the niche that I am part of and enjoy on YouTube. I sort of feel like I'm watching the same video kind of over and over again. Not even just that the same thing is being talked about on multiple channels, but that it's like even the timing of topics seems to be fatiguing in a way. And it's definitely not a dig on anyone who's making stuff and working their butt off to try to make the best things possible. But when I think back to, 10 years ago, we'll say, or even less, but to having, we'll say 10 channels that I followed, liked, and subscribed to, it sort of felt like even though they were all talking about the same basic topic or were part of the same niche, that they were exploring things differently, kind of on their own terms, based on their own interests and specialties. So you might have a gear review from one channel or talking about a camera. You might have another channel do a video about lenses, another couple channels talk about lighting, and then someone talks about editing and certain editing applications. So it was all the same genre, the same niche, but it was very different conversations happening at the same time from these different areas. It's like going to a music festival and hearing bands from like kind of a similar genre, but also totally different styles playing whatever they felt like making at the same time, versus going like a music festival where even if a band is great, there's like 10 bands that are all kind of playing the same song. And it's a good song and it sounds awesome, but like maybe I kind of want to hear something else. And maybe I'm worried that some of the bands playing that song, that's not the song they would actually be choosing to play. That's kind of a song they feel they need to play, or they didn't even know that they could play a different song. I kind of feel like maybe it has something to do with that. Again, I'm exploring these thoughts on my own, and I don't know. I don't have any conclusions or data or anything, but that's kind of what it feels like, because it seems like if I look through like a lot of the stuff I'm subscribed to now personally, I can sort of see waves. Okay, like this. Recently, it's all been Apple Vision, or what, I don't know, Apple Vision Pro Plus something, whatever, the goggles, the Apple goggles. That is like a topic that is very timely and very popular, and even channels that have nothing to do, I'm not, even it's a non-Apple channel, a non-computer channel, I'm seeing channels talk about that. It's a very popular topic. I know that sort of dominates things more than other topics, but that's kind of how it has felt. It's like, here's a new camera release. So here, so many of the channels that I like are now talking about that. And now here's the next release. So many are talking about that. The next release, so many are talking about that, which is not different from what's happened in the past, but it's entirely different from what's happened in the past. And I think so much of it comes down to brand relationships. And I know marketing is not inherently evil. I can hear the comments coming in about like marketing's not evil, this, that, and the other thing. But I really feel like brands are in the driver's seat more than they should be on the platform. I shouldn't even say on many channels, on the platform. And I think that's kind of, when I go back to some of those original, channels that drew me in and got me excited, a lot of it, again, starting before there was like an influencer economy and a creator economy and all that, when it's just somebody sharing their knowledge and excitement about something, say it's Canon cameras. So here's, we're talking about cameras. I'm using the Canon 5D Mark II or whatever, was big at the time. And here's how to get good footage. Here's how to shoot with it. So then when an announcement of a new camera comes out or a new capability, it's sort of like this exciting news in that enthusiast community. And then there were channels that it was literally like, oh, I ordered it. I got mine first. So now my video is me like sharing it literally out of excitement, it's not just for like views and clicks and because I know this will do well, but it's, like, oh, we were all excited about this thing. I actually got one. And now trying to convey thoughts and performance and what it's like to actually use the thing in the real world. And that kind of led to like a tangible excitement. I know what I'm talking about is very product-based. It doesn't have to be product-based, but that's a product that was tied to a passion and an enthusiasm and a creative goal. And it was like the idea of being able to explore that more fully was really exciting. And that's kind of where so much of that early content came from. And then naturally, brands started being aware of this. Hey, there's this channel that's always talking about our stuff. We should send them something. And sometimes it would just be a nice little gift. Like, hey, creator in 2012, here's a thing to say thank you. And then other times it would be, hey, we're coming out with a new thing. Keeping in mind, I'm saying this recording into a Rodecaster Duo that was sent to me yesterday. We're coming out with a new thing. We want to send it to you just to see what you like about it, what you think about it. And then it has evolved to a point of like the term I've heard is channels covering stuff. So that is not necessarily a place of enthusiasm at all, because it's, you might as a creator not care about this product or this thing that's coming out, but you feel an obligation to quote unquote cover it for your channel because that's what people want to hear. And that's what's going to get you eyeballs and ad revenue and maintain positive relationships with brands. But that becomes very soul sucking after a while. And maybe that's part. I feel like the soul has been sucked out of so much of what I used to love about YouTube, and that makes me sad. And I feel like I could be way off the mark. Like I totally could be off the mark, and you'd be like, what are you talking about, Tom? You're a crazy person. That could completely be the case. But I do feel like, and the reason I wanted to share this is if I'm having these thoughts, chances are somebody else is having a version of them or kind of has noticed something similar too. And I think it's a good thing to explore because I would really love to find a way to navigate through that. And it feels like this thing that I thought was a transition that would have something that sort of pops and takes people out of it, that hasn't happened yet. So maybe it's time to actively start looking at ways to do that. So the other thing that has really kind of put me in this mindset is really evaluating the relationship with brands. And that's when I said brands in the driver's seat, I've talked about that before here, but when there's somebody who, whether they're a professional or a hobbyist, their enthusiasm and their passion for something drives them to use it, talk about it, share info about it. And if there's a company behind that wants to send them something that's cool, that's very different than a company saying, we are sending you to this with the expectation of, or with the implied expectation that you're going to create something about it. Or, this is sort of, companies have influencer marketing budgets now. That's not something that they had 10 years ago. It's not something, it's totally different. And I feel like that is what then took the creator out of the driver's seat, put the brand in the driver's seat, because now it is their product release schedule, their specific type of content that they want to create, whether it's paid or not. And that is, I think that's a bad thing. I think brands don't know any better. Like they are just, they're just trying to do what they do and trying to market their stuff and reach customers and whatever. But they are not going to have, even if you have a good relationship with a brand, they are not going to have your best interest at heart the same way that you do. And they're not going to understand what you're trying to do the same way that you do. And they're not going to value it as much as you probably do. And so it's very scary then to give them any kind of control over what it is that you're making and how you're approaching it and when you're making something. I think that can be pretty scary. And I sort of went into this a little bit last week, but one of the things that really was a problem for me recently was my review of the Rode Streamer X. And I've been debating whether or not to even bring this up, but I think it's a really good example. And it's not Rode's fault. If anything, it's kind of my fault. So the Streamer X, first and foremost, works great. Everything that Rode said it's supposed to do, it does, and it does really well. It's like perfect in that regard. Their documentation needs a lot of work, because this is something that I've seen with Rode specifically over the past year, which is why I've been very skeptical of some of the new stuff, is their marketing is sort of out of control in terms of hype. And I get it. You got stuff that you want to market and you want to hype it up, but it sets expectations in a certain way. And so the Streamer X, for me, what happened, if you don't know, basically I made a video about the Streamer X, and the footage in the video was a little bit laggy. Like I was recording it with the Streamer X, which is a audio capture card, 4K video. The clarity of the video was phenomenal, but it was kind of like laggy, and it honestly to me looked fine for a live stream. Like I wouldn't have really complained if I were streaming with that, but it was not good for recording, and it wasn't as good as I was hoping the Streamer X would be. And I was just running, my camera into the Streamer X, into Ecamm Live, the same way I've done everything forever. And so it was kind of this thing that happened on my end, which was I set it up the way that I read the limited documentation that came with it. I saw all of the marketing materials, which essentially says, hey, this is a plug and play, super simple device. It's going to be really helpful to use. And then I even did reach out and ask some clarifying questions, because I was getting significant lag on my M1 Mac Mini. And then I got less on the M1 Max MacBook Pro. And so I was like, okay, I guess the computer, that was kind of part of it too, is like it looked really bad on this computer and it looked a lot better on this other one, although still not as good as like a normal video would look. And so then I made the video with that. And the problem there was that it didn't look right. It didn't look as good as it should. And I knew, like, there was a part of me obviously that knew that, but what I did was I readjusted my expectations, because I was like, okay, this is going to be something that could potentially replace my camera's SD card. I could get perfect quality video into my computer just using this and not even have to use my camera's memory card. That would be awesome. 4K, like awesome video. And that's not what I was getting. And so I readjusted my expectations going, well, it's called the Streamer X. I would actually be okay with this for streaming, and maybe with even a more powerful computer, it would look better. So I kind of like lowered and readjusted my expectations and then shared the video. Turns out the problem was that the Streamer X sort of defaults all of the output to 30 frames per second. And so even though my camera and Ecamm Live are both set to 24, there was this thing in the middle that was sort of like trying to do 30, and it was causing stuff to not look that great. So that's really a pretty easy thing to fix. And then there were also just a few other settings in Ecamm and OBS that I needed to adjust. And then I was getting quality of footage that was virtually indistinguishable from the camera's memory card. It was 8-bit versus 10-bit footage, so there is a bit of a difference, but a bit of a difference. 2 bits, you could say. But it's very, very usable. Like, it looks fantastic, and that is what I was expecting. And so what happened was I made that video, was very curious about what was happening here, so then I thought there might be something wrong. I took that video down, which I've never done before. I've never taken a video down, but I was worried it was going to cause a bit of confusion. Spent a day investigating, figured out what my problem was, got things working great again. Essentially, even with the other settings I needed to change, basically it's like just use 30 frames per second. And then I made a follow-up video that was kind of about the settings. And that video, the video quality looks great. I explain what settings I changed in my camera, in OBS, and Ecamm Live, so that way it's kind of an easy thing. Felt like a lot of other people might have this same problem. as they get their Streamer X's, and this is a good way to help solve that. So then I published that video and put the original one back up because it, now it had context, and I could link to that second one on the end screen. I could have cards in there. I could pin comments in the description, like, yes, I know this video looks laggy. There's a lot of good info here, and this was the best I could get, but here's a follow-up. Here's a follow-up about why that happened. Now, the reason that happened on my end was, I guess, truthfully, the big mistake is like, of course I should just check frame rates right away. But in my mind, literally everything, and I just checked this last night, everything about the Streamer X says it accepts inputs up to 4K 30. Keywords up to 4K 30, not at 4K 30. Very, very different. So 24, less than 30, 24 is up to 4K 30. So it just was like, yeah, this, according to every bit of marketing, every bit of documentation, support material, it should be able to handle 24 frames per second. And it does not. It does not handle it well at all because it's a 30 frame per second device. I guess that's what it turns out. So I should have just experimented. Let me try 30 and see how that works. And I would have noticed, oh, wow, this looks a lot better. But I didn't do that because it didn't even occur to me that I should have to do that because nothing said that I should. Now, where Rode could fix this problem is to make that clear. When you buy the Streamer X and you open up the box, this is where I'm talking about their marketing, like not serving customers. And I know it sounds like I'm just ranting about Rode, but I promise there's a bigger context here. When you open up the lid of the Streamer X, there's sort of these 4 steps right on the lid of the box. There's really no documentation that comes with it. So if you want the full user guide, you have to go online and find it, which I think that kind of sucks, but I get it lets things be kept up to date in a bigger way. The quick start 4 steps that are on the lid of the box aren't actually helpful. They essentially say, plug it in and download the software if you want. Okay. It's like, that's not helpful. Like step 1 is literally connect to your computer. Okay, I could probably figure out that this capture card needs to be connected to my computer. It doesn't say using the high-speed USB cable provided. If you don't use that specific cable that it comes with, you will not get a video signal into your computer. And most of us probably don't have even Thunderbolt cables don't work because they're not high speed enough, some of them. So you may or may not have a cable that's high speed. Chances are, if you're just a normal person, you probably don't. And the Streamer X comes with a really long, super high-speed cable. So it solves the problem. There is no problem. Just use that cable. But nowhere in the documentation does it say that. And so what's going to happen is what happened with me, where you already got cables plugged into your computer. Why do I need another USB-C cable? Why do I need to go route this under my desk or whatever? I'm just going to plug it into one of my existing cables. Why isn't it working well? And then you're troubleshooting what shouldn't have been a problem in the first place. Step 2 says connect an audio source. Sure, that makes sense. There is no step about connecting a video source. Step 3 should be connect video source, and it should say connect 30 frame per second video source. And that would solve everything, because then these are the 2 biggest problems that I had, even with my experience and my direct access to people who make the product. These are the problems I had. Was that the cable, it's not clear you need to use that cable, so you may not get a video signal. It's not clear that you have to use 30 frames per second, otherwise you're going to get stutter and jitter and everything. So if they just put those two little lines of text on the box lid, it would solve so many customer problems. But now, especially, I'm seeing this as it's coming out, as it's being put into people's hands. People are encountering these problems, which shouldn't be problems and really aren't problems, but it's bad communication because all of the marketing is focused on marketing and it's not focused on customer support, which is, again, last week why I was so shocked at the Mackie user guide for the DLZ, because it's written so incredibly well. It takes these advanced things and breaks them down into a way that a normal human can understand them. And it's clear that the people who created it genuinely are like putting themselves in the user's seat and trying to create something that's best for them. And that's really cool. The Rode didn't do that with the Streamer X, and that's what led to me having the problem that I had. But when all was said and done, I was like, okay, there's still a lot of really good info in this video that has the bad looking footage, I guess you could call it. And then now there's a follow-up that explains how to get good looking footage. So together, those 2 things kind of cover everything. And then Rode did ask me to take down the original video. So it went up and then it went down again. And at the time recording this, it's still down and will probably stay that way just because I don't want to deal with it anymore. But that caused me a lot of issues because I've never taken a video down before, much less at somebody else's request, and it's not a sponsored video. And Rode's reaction, what they said was that they felt it did not accurately represent the product, which is true. It did not accurately represent the capabilities of the product, but it did accurately represent the user experience with the product. And I'm not that clearly not everybody who has it is having this problem, but I would consider myself above average in experience with audio video gear, and I still had these problems. So I definitely know that I'm not the only person having them. And I kind of thought, well, having this whole thing here might actually be helpful. Ideally, it would have been great to make a video that didn't have any problems, but that's not what happened. And so with that in mind, with what did happen in the reality we live in, this seems to be a really good, human, down-to-earth approach to kind of cover this. And when they asked me to take it down, I definitely let them know that I was pretty pissed off about that and not happy about that. And I'm still not happy about that. And they were very, very apologetic, and they explained a lot of things on their end, which I did understand. So ultimately, I'm trying to use that as a learning experience in a couple of ways. But the thing that really bothered me was another reason that happened in the first place was because I did change my expectations for Rode. If I had gotten the Streamer X and it was a Mackie brand product, say, I'm just because the Mackie mixer's here. So if it were a Mackie Streamer X and I got it and it didn't look the way I was hoping it to, I wouldn't have made a video about it saying that it's bad. I probably just wouldn't have made a video about it because I would have gone, oh, this isn't living up to my expectations. Okay, I'm just not going to use this. I'm going to wait till they come up with a firmware update or something. And because it was Rode, I really, really did want the new products to succeed and I want them to do well. And I was rooting for them. And that caused me to readjust my expectations in a way that I shouldn't have, which then prevented me from looking at the thing objectively. And that is really scary because even with the ethics statement and the agreements that happen with brands and the no obligation to make anything, and even though I'm feeling like, yes, I know if I say something negative about a product, a company could get mad and never send me anything again. I don't care. That's fine. It's helpful to have access to equipment, but if a company wants to not send any, that's fine too. I'm not entitled to getting equipment, and sometimes it causes more trouble than it solves. So that's not a problem. But I also, because not just that the reason I'm rooting for the products, because I also now know some of the people behind the scenes who make it and who worked really hard on it and who do care about doing a good job, which is why it makes me sad when I see marketing misses and when I see, things that just aren't hitting the target the way that they should. It's a very conflicting thing, and that caused me to that caused me to change my expectations in that video for a way that I wouldn't have for any other product. And to me, that wasn't okay. So the biggest learning experience I took away was even though it's not about making a video in exchange for free products, just because I am empathetic to the humans behind this thing that they worked really hard on, it is causing me to not maintain objectivity in a way that I thought I was able to. So that was genuinely a good wake-up call. And so if that's the result of that whole situation is hey, here's a bit of a reminder that you kind of need to stay on the ball here a bit more, I think that is a positive outcome. But then it just really, really got me thinking in so many ways. My experience working with brands, I haven't worked with a ton. It's kind of a handful of brands like Rode and Sennheiser and Artlist and Nanlite. I'm trying to think, GoPro a little bit. The brands I've worked with they've been great. And it's because they do crawl through the broken field of glass that is my ethics statement before we'll even, enter into a conversation. Some of those have been sponsored. I've done sponsored and non-sponsored things for Sennheiser. I've never done an actual sponsored thing for Rode, despite what many people have said. They've never given me any actual money. And for some reason, my bank won't let me pay my mortgage with Rodecasters. So I've not been paid by Rode, even though they have sent gear a number of times throughout the years, which I am appreciative. But that's a question too that pops up is, okay, if this is happening and this is causing stress and it's causing these conflicts, why even accept any free gear at all? And that is a really good question, because so many of these problems wouldn't happen for me or other channels if we just didn't accept anything for free, right? Like if I just, the times when which is most of the time, honestly, when I'm talking about something that I just bought, just go to B&H or Amazon or Sweetwater or wherever and just buy something. And now that's what I'm making a video about or talking about. There's no pressure, because even when I am under no obligation to make a video about a product, but I get something and I choose to make a video about it, I get something sent to me and choose to make a video about it, I'm aware that there are eyeballs from that company on that video. And even though that does not change what's in the video, it does make me feel uncomfortable, because it adds like a little bit of pressure and a little bit of stress. And, it adds me feeling a little bit under a microscope and a little bit judged. And it's not a fun way to feel. And that's going to happen even in the best scenarios, working with the best possible partners and sponsors. There's always going to be a little bit of that feeling. There's always going to be the sense of, especially if something's sponsored, the sense of wanting to please the person who's sponsoring it, right? Like not necessarily in terms of the content, but maybe the performance or the quality of it or the demonstration of knowledge within it. That's a very uncomfortable way for me to feel, which is why I don't do a ton of sponsored stuff, and it's why my rates are a little bit higher when I do sponsored stuff, because they need to pay to like help me get over all of this stuff and to make it worth it in the end. So as that transition has happened, I talked about like from the earlier days of YouTube to now, where brands were originally just sort of helping provide access to creators for a lot of just financial and budgetary reasons. Most people can't afford, even if you're super into cameras, you can't get every new camera and check it out. Maybe you get one every few years and that's what you talk about. Okay, so a brand's like, hey, you're interested in this, you make a lot of videos about it, here, we'll send you the new one so you can check it out. It kind of went from that sort of grassroots. I know that there's an economic motivator for brands to do that, but it is a lot more humble than what we have now, which is so many channels end up becoming parts of the marketing wings for companies. And that is a very tough line to walk as a creator. And for me, like I said, the bias can come not from wanting free gear, not from wanting, the company to be happy with the video, but from rooting for the people behind the gear, because you build relationships with them. And so what that means, though, is for any number of reasons, I think many creators are allowing brands to be in the driver's seat. And that has also led to then an abundance of what feels like marketing first videos. And I think that is something that is causing a lot of fatigue. I know that's causing fatigue for me. I don't even watch product release video. Like when Sony announces a new camera, even if I'm interested in it, I don't watch any of the videos about it. I used to always watch at least a couple. I don't watch any of them anymore, because I just feel like I'm not going to get, like, this is a weird thing too, just from a creator perspective. If you're sent something to review it and you try your best, like you literally go, here's everything in the instruction manual that this thing says it's supposed to do. And I'm going to kind of go through and check the boxes. Does it do it? Does it do it well? What does it feel like to use it? Do I think it's worth the money? Like everything that feels like it goes into a good, solid, objective review, even that is very different than talking about something that has been genuinely incorporated into your workflow. Like the Boss Gigcaster that I mentioned last week a little bit. It's also sitting here on my desk. I was going to use that to record today's episode, but then the Duo showed up and I was like, I really want to use the Duo. But the Boss Gigcaster, it's something that I still don't know how to approach in terms of a video, or if I will. But my initial thoughts were, hey, I see this and I'm really excited about it. And then I got it and I was very disappointed, because the price is too high, the build quality is not great, the interface is bad, and most of the features are fine at best. Like it's fine, but it's $700. It's the same price as the Rodecaster Pro 2. And what it really does is if you go from the Gigcaster to the Rodecaster, you just go, oh my God, Rode's like years of experience in user interface design and just everything. It's like, it just makes the Rodecaster look so much better. And so I was like, okay, this thing is just a miss. Like it's not a hit at all. And it's just kind of sitting on my desk. And then time went on, didn't really know how to approach it. But the one thing that the Gigcaster has over everything else, like I said last week, is its music capabilities, its ability to not only take a guitar or a bass, but then to have hundreds potentially presets and amp models and ways to EQ and modify things, which are incredibly powerful and sound amazing. And it's better than literally any other product on the market in that regard. Getting it and plugging it in and listening to that, it's kind of like, whoa, there is something here. And I still don't know what that means, but it has become my main. I actually prefer to play my guitars and bass through that than through my actual amps, because it's like I can get better sound more easily. I can mix in backing tracks and play along with songs way more easily. And it's quiet. I can listen through headphones so it doesn't disrupt anybody or anything. That is really cool. And so now it's on my desk, kind of getting used a little bit more, kind of working into a workflow a little bit. I don't know where that's going to lead, but that is definitely giving me a different perspective and a different opinion on it than I had when I was just taking it out of the box, checking off lists of like, does it do this? Does it do that? How does it compare to this? And I think that's, as a viewer, you can feel that. You can feel when somebody is, like, let's put it this way. Have you ever watched a what's in my camera bag video, and the person pulls out this busted up old camera bag with a bunch of like gear that's not necessarily the latest and greatest? And if you're like me, you might find that to be one of the most satisfying videos you've ever watched, because you're just like, you can tell that the stuff is used and the person knows like, this is the camera that I use, and I use this, this accessory for it, but I had to move this part here and switch that over there to make it work well. And I know there's a different version I could get for this, but this works good because what I wanted, like, everything is just dialed in so specifically. That is very different than if you've ever watched like a camera bag, what's in my camera bag video, which sometimes, brands will just send a bunch of products. So it's like, what's in my camera bag? Okay, here's a brand new camera bag that I've never used. Here's a bunch of new gear inside of it that I've never used, but it's all part of like this brand's system or set or whatever. And it's like, that is supremely unsatisfying, I guess. I don't know, whatever the correct term would be, because it doesn't feel, on its surface, it's the same thing. It's a person talking about what's in their camera bag, but one is so genuinely authentic and the other is so absolutely disingenuous that it's a very different thing, even though on the surface they feel the same. And ultimately, okay, going back to like, what the heck does this even have to do with like the YouTube, changing an approach to YouTube? There is a huge difference between hearing somebody talk about something that they're excited for, or to share some like helpful tips or insights, versus feeling like you're just watching a commercial. And again, especially in the camera photo world, because I've noticed this, like the Streamer X video that I made with the choppy footage. If I had a baking channel and all my videos were about, chocolate chip cookies or whatever, and I was using that quality of footage to make my videos, I don't think anybody would ever say anything about it. Like, it would be totally fine. But they would definitely be criticizing, the the baking pans or the type of chocolate that I'm using or something, whatever's specific to that niche. They wouldn't be talking about the audio video quality. On a photo video related channel, all of your audio video components are analyzed and looked at critically in every video, which makes sense, like they should be. So what that means too is then you want everything to look good and to sound really good. If you're somebody who's in that niche like me, it means you also like using that stuff. So when I need to show a product, I don't want to just have some like poorly lit, shot of a dusty product sitting on a table like, yeah, here's the thing. No, I want to set up, here's some cool lights, here's a cool background, here's a cool camera move. I'm going to switch to a lens that helps this look its best. And everything looks, really slick and really cool. But it also is like, at what point, like, what is the difference between making a commercial and making B-roll footage for a video? And, I think context is everything. And I do think that intent matters. But when you look at that from a company's point of view, that's like, hey, we're coming out with a new product. We're going to send this to these people. We're going to ask them to publish videos on this date. Maybe we're paying them. Maybe we're not. But in return, if the cost that they're spending is sending out free products, or even if they are sending along some money as well, in return, what they're getting are like these highly produced commercials reaching an audience, a huge, very specific audience for their product. So of course companies are going to do that. But then on the viewer side of things, you just feel like you're watching commercials. I don't feel like I'm watching people talk about stuff that they're excited about, stuff that they're genuinely using, stuff that they really have specific insight on to share with me and give me knowledge about. I feel like I'm just watching ads because I kind of am just watching ads. And so going all the way back to Grace's message from the beginning, hearing that whichever podcast episodes or videos she saw were more helpful than a lot of other stuff she had seen like in the past year really means a lot to me. And I would love to know, I as like a creative person want to know how that, what it is. How did I do that? What did it? Which ones did that? Why did they do that? What led to that feeling? Because I would love to focus more on that than anything else. And I would, as much as I've said it, I would really love to put brands, not even just in the passenger seat, but like you are in a trailer being towed behind the car. Like you are not in the car. You're a roadside attraction, and you're over there. And I'm here, and I will stop by that roadside attraction when I need to and when I want to, and I will drive right past it when I want to as well. And I think that is the approach to take, but it is also a scary approach because it especially when you do this full time, or even if it's part time, if there's any kind of revenue or bill paying being attached to what you're doing, it's like, well, it feels like that could potentially hurt things. And I think that's genuinely, okay, here's the discussion that I was having with Heather a couple weeks ago. I was thinking that what would my life be like if I were independently wealthy? Believe it or not, I'm not independently wealthy as a former public high school teacher. But say that there's so much money in the bank that I never had to think about money again for the rest of my life, kind of no matter what, like independently wealthy. What would I do? Like when the things that you spend your time on are not tied to any kind of monetary stress or anything, what would I do? And I, of course, was like, well, would I still be making videos and stuff? And my answer immediately is yes. Like I would still have my YouTube channel. I would still make videos for my YouTube channel. I would make a lot of the exact same videos for my YouTube channel that I'm making now. The thing that would be different is definitely like I do feel a sense of pride that I don't hold myself to, like release waves and things. Even this Rodecaster Duo, I'm so excited to have it. I'm really lucky to be like one of the first people in the world that has one outside of the Rhodes factory. And what I could do, what every YouTube guru and coach would tell you to do is right now, today, I need to make a video about this and publish that video because I will be the first person who has a video about that. And that is going to get a lot of attention, a lot of eyeballs. It's going to be really popular. I can make follow-up videos. I can make a whole series of videos about the Rodecaster Duo before anyone else even has one. I don't think I'm going to do that, though. Like, I think it's been working great. And if you're hearing this, obviously it worked fantastic. I really like it, and I would love to keep using it. And at some point, I would love to make a video about that, but I don't know when that's going to be, and I don't know what the context of that's going to be. And I want to be able to keep following that feeling versus the like, well, this is really going to do better today. And like, I know that's, I guess like at my core, that's what I've always done. Like, it's not like I haven't made videos I didn't want to make. I've never made a video I didn't want to make. I've never let anyone control my calendar or my schedule or anything, but I felt a lot of pressure to maybe do I need to reconsider? Do I need to do this? And the whole debacle with the Streamer X video was kind of a breaking point for me. Where it was like, this sucks. Like, I do not like feeling as though I have a boss. I felt like I did something wrong. I guess maybe that's even a better way to put it. I felt like I did something wrong and that I messed up and that I owed apologies, and that is wrong. And I do not want to put myself in that position. And that is also not a place that I'm going to be able to make anything that's helpful to other people in the way that, Grace said it was, or that even I've been lucky enough to have other people tell me that stuff has been. So if I were independently wealthy, I would really lean into not continuing to not cover like current releases unless they're relevant. Like with the Rodecaster Duo, I really like this thing for a lot of reasons, but I've only had it a day right now at the time I'm recording this. I would love to spend a lot of time with it. I would love to do what been doing with the Boss Gigcaster and just kind of have it hang out. It's going to be here, and if it's a genuinely useful thing for me, it will find its way into a spot, into a workflow, into something where it's like, gosh, this freaking thing is so great, and that's how I want to feel if I choose to make a video about it. That might not happen. It might be like, gosh, I really prefer the bigger Rodecaster. I don't really ever use this thing. Maybe I don't want to make a video about it. Like, that could happen too. And either way is fine. But I want to let that happen organically as much as possible. The other thing, which this is a scarier one, is if I were independently wealthy, I think I would stay off of I would not be scared to veer off of the weekly upload schedule. I'm scared to even say that. You could tell my hesitation in even saying that. I think I think I like the idea of uploading a video a week, because I think that that's, as a creative person, having to make something regularly is a very good exercise. But having to make something regularly is also very stressful. And there are some times where it's like, I would kind of like a couple weeks off, or maybe I'm not in the mood to make something right now. And for the past, 6 years, what that's meant is when I want to take time off, or I'm thinking, okay, I don't want to, or I'm not going to be able to make something for the next week or two, then I just double down and work many times harder to create that, that backlog. So that way I can step away for a second, but nothing, the machine never stops, which and honestly, in terms of practicality, is a really good way to do it. And I don't know that I can change that. I don't know if I'm at a point where I could change that. Again, if I were independent, the reason I don't know if I can change that is because it would be bad for the channel. It would hurt my YouTube channel to not post at least one video a week, and that would hurt other things, which would let me pay my bills and live. So that's going to end up cascading into a world of huge amounts of stress. And so, every job has pros and cons to it, right? Whether it's being an independent content creator or working in an office somewhere, there's stuff that's good and there's stuff that's bad. And one of the realities of this job is that I need to keep making stuff to keep the ship sailing. I need to put coal into that fire. And so the balance that I'm walking right now is I can accept that because I love making stuff. I really do. And so it's ultimately a pretty small complaint in the grand scheme of things. But in the world of you're constantly making something, not getting caught up in making anything that I don't feel like is the number one thing that I want to make at that moment. And that can be tricky if you're well, I have to make something for this week. Is there something that I'm dying to make, or am I making something for the sake of making something? And that is a very tough line to walk, but I think it's better for everybody, creator and viewer, if the thing that you make is, if money weren't an issue, it's what you would be doing anyway. It's what, starting my YouTube channel, operating at a loss. I am paying money to have this channel because of all the the backside of things that cost money to produce videos and license music and all that stuff, time, opportunity cost, all of that. that's a special thing, because then that's obviously the thing you'd be preferring to do over anything else. And that is how I feel about making videos. But I want to I really, really want that to be clear to myself and to others when there's a video. And so in a world where I'm not independently wealthy, unfortunately, at least in this multiverse, that has not happened yet. One thing, this is going to sound like a sales pitch, and I swear it isn't, but one thing that I've been really thinking about lately is Patreon and YouTube channel memberships. So if you'd like to sign up, no, I'm just kidding. I think that can be a really good middle ground that I would like to explore more, and that maybe if you're having any of the same feelings that I'm having, that you might want to look into also, because those things are really hard to start and to grow and to maintain at all. But I am a patron of a lot of different channels on YouTube, and people that I support for all kinds of different reasons. And some of them, like, it's kind of crazy when it's like, okay, here's a channel, for example, that's roughly the same size as mine. And I've had, channel memberships and Patreon open for 3 years, almost 3 years at this point. I have just over 100 supporters, which is phenomenal. So thank you. A lot of people are listening to this, so thank you very much. But there are a number of channels my similar size who have 1,000 or 5,000. Like, it's a different scale. And it's interesting because the common theme that I've noticed across a lot of them is the freedom that buys. It almost is like being independently wealthy, even though you're not, because that's the whole point, right? Of having a patron, like literally in whatever, like medieval times, if an artist had a patron, they are being supported to create art by this person, to make their stuff by this person. I know there's a lot more complicated details behind it, but that's the essentials. That's kind of what those things do. Patreon, channel memberships, all that stuff. When I look at a channel that has, through whatever means, whether they have 5,000 members that are each paying $1 a month or 1,000 that are paying $5, whatever it is, when it's like, oh, you're making a comfortable monthly income, like $5,000, $10,000 a month from this, that is then, like, you kind of don't have to worry about anything else. Now, okay, a couple thoughts there. That does mean, and the good news is everything else, your affiliate revenue, your AdSense, your merchandise sale, whatever you might have, that's all like icing on the cake. If your YouTube viewership takes a downturn and your ad revenue gets cut, to 25% of what it was last month, it doesn't really matter, because the channel supporter, the member supporter, is there to literally support you. And obviously then, there could be a benefit if things tend to do even better. The part where I would be scared is if that were my main source of revenue, I would feel such a sense of guilt and like obligation. And I don't know how I would get over the idea of, there's a couple of creators I follow who make the transition from part-time to full-time. And they've but they've chosen to make videos or posts like on their Patreon where they say, I've never used any of this money for personal expenses. Like every dollar I've ever gotten from Patreon goes straight into production, like buying equipment, buying gear, renting studio space. But now that I'm making the leap to full-time, I'm going to have to use these costs for, food and personal expenses and vacations and, gifts and whatever, like the stuff you buy as a person. And they feel a huge sense of guilt about that. I feel like I would feel that same sense of guilt, which then, of course, literally everybody replies to those saying, like, we are here to support you. We don't care like what you're doing. Like, we choose to support you. The benefit of that, though, is when you have a decent number of people supporting you, no one has to provide all of the support, right? Like, if you're running, for whatever it is, a couple of dollars to, $15, $20, $30 a month, whatever tiers you have set up on whatever platform you're using. I don't want to say it doesn't matter if somebody leaves, because it does, but people come and go, right? Like, people get really into your stuff, they want to support you, and then they fall out of love with it and they want to move on to something else. Their financial situations change. There's so many reasons people start and stop supporting other people, and that's completely fine. But the point is, when you have that decent number, you're not relying on any one person. You know, if a couple people need to leave that month, it's not really going to sink you, because hopefully a couple more people will join, and it all just kind of evens out or goes at least in an upward trend. Even if there's peaks and valleys, the overall trend is upward, or at least relatively stable, if not like upward. And that to me is like the closest way for a creator to achieve independent wealth without actually being independent wealthy, because it buys you independence. You're not beholden to a brand or ad revenue or anything. And so if, for example, if I knew, okay, I don't want to make a video this week because I want to spend 2 or 3 weeks working on one idea, or because I need time off and I'm exhausted, and I'll be able to make something so much better once I come back from taking time off. And yes, that is going to hurt my channel's performance. That's going to hurt my ad revenue. It's going to hurt my affiliate sales. It's going to hurt my channel growth. But it doesn't matter, because my primary bucket is this, this channel supporter thing. Then I think new problems would pop up. Like I said, feelings of guilt and obligation. But I think it would also kind of buy a lot of freedom. And so I don't have a solution to that, but it makes me feel like that's probably something worth exploring more, to maybe find a way. I feel so weird even talking about this stuff, but I don't know, maybe that's why it's worth talking about. I just feel like there's something there to some sort of scale and some sort of degree to really kind of focus on that, because those are the people, if I'm going to spend time getting mad about a negative comment somebody leaves or whatever, where it's like they don't even care about the stuff that you make, they've never seen anything else, they don't even like what you do, I would rather spend a lot more time and attention on people who are going above and beyond, out of their way to go like, no, we like what you do so much, we actually want to support you to do more of it. That is pretty cool. And that's something that, you couldn't do in this way, this easily and this broadly, up until just a few years ago. Like most of human history, this was not a thing that was possible. And now it is. And that is pretty cool. And I feel like that helps buy a lot of independence and objectivity. And, now I feel like I'm sort of rambling a little bit, but these are just, again, I don't have a firm conclusion here. These are like my thoughts as I'm working through them, because I think it's an important thing to share. And ultimately what it comes down to for me is that knowing that if I were independently wealthy, money's not an issue, I would still want to make my YouTube channel. Makes me so happy. And make the podcast too. Like, podcast is a fun side. Like, this is included, is that, by the way. That makes me really happy, because it makes me feel like I'm on the right track. Yeah, this is right now, sitting here recording this is what I want to be doing right now. Like, this is my choice. I'm so excited about it. I was literally looking forward to it all day. Even yesterday, I was like, maybe I could record that episode today, but I was a little bit tired. I was like, no, I should wait till tomorrow. And I didn't want to wait. It kind of feels like Christmas morning. Like, I'm waking up like, I can't wait to go do the thing. That is a cool way to feel. I want to protect that. So it makes me feel good that that's how I feel about the stuff that I make. And I want to keep feeling that way. I don't want to second guess ideas. I don't want to have any brand or corporation put their hands on that in a way that takes away from that feeling. I want them, if brands are involved, I want them to be in ways that support and enable and, that just are positive and helpful, and not ways that add to stress and frustration. And I think that is something that the brand creator relationship is something that a lot of creators need to reevaluate, because it seems like the scale has tipped way too far, where brands are in the driver's seat, and that is taking the fun out of it for creators, and it's taking the fun out of it and the enjoyment out of it for viewers as well, which ironically then ends up hurting the brands, because their stuff is not being effective as they wanted it to be. And I want to keep exploring this to figure out the path that I want to take to make the stuff that I'm most excited about, that I think is most helpful, interesting, and entertaining. And if you're somebody who makes stuff, I guess the takeaway is I think that that is a path worth examining, and I would really genuinely love if you have any thoughts. Please share those with me. You can always send them to tom@enthusiasmproject.com, or just like Grace did at the beginning of the video, beginning of the episode, you can go to himynameistom.com, scroll down to the SpeakPipe link, and then leave your message, just recording with whatever device you happen to be, wherever you happen to be. I don't care if there's background noise. You got a dog barking, you're on vacation, you got the sound of the ocean waves in the background. That would even be a great thing. Put the sound of ocean waves in the background of your message, even if you're in a dark basement somewhere. But anyway, those are my thoughts. This has been my weekly therapy session. Thank you so much for listening. I, again, would love to hear from you, but otherwise, I hope you have a safe, happy, healthy, fun rest of your week, and I will see you next time.